How often does judgment get in the way of your happiness? Today, we're going to explore how letting go of judgment can unlock compassion, joy, and the freedom to truly live in the moment.
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
All right, welcome everyone. Jeff Boss. Jeff Boss is with us today. Jeff Boss is a therapist intern working with first responders, an author, a Marshall Blade concepts instructor, and a former Navy SEAL with 13 years of service. He's also deeply involved in the meditation and mental health space. Based in Virginia with his wife, who he calls 2.0, and their two kids, Jeff shares how his personal and professional experiences have shaped his understanding of mindfulness and how judgment can hold us back from living a full life. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks, John. I cannot wait to tell my wife that was aired publicly.
Well, we can always edit it out if we need to.
No, it's all good. It's awesome. It's awesome. I put that in the email because I thought it was funny because I like funny stuff. But
yeah,
that's perfect. That's awesome.
Right on, man. Well, we're excited to get into
true.
this conversation. Yeah, perfect, man. I want to hear more about that, how that came to be. As I explained before we hit record, we start the show off with a one breath grounding practice. So if you would join me, if you're up to that, and when I say you, I mean you, Jeff, and our audience. And that looks like just closing your eyes if that's available to you. And let's just bring our attention to our breath. And we're going to start with a nice exhalation, letting it go and focusing on what that feels like, holding empty at the bottom. Nice deep breath in, filling all the way up to the top, holding full at the top, and releasing. And as you release that breath, release some of that tension, that stress, that anxiety, whatever it is that you're holding inside, and blink your eyes open if they're closed. And again, welcome to the show, Jeff. Excited to have you here, man. I'm going to jump right in with a little backstory. So Jeff and I, both former SEALs, and you would think that with our community being as small as it is, we cross paths in the SEALs. We've compared notes, and I don't think we ever did. Funny enough, we actually connected through a meditation course that we had both taken through Sean Fargo's mindfulness course, where we both got certified as mindfulness teachers. We got on their little miniature social media platform, and I had put in there my background, and then Jeff jumped in. He's like, "Hey, I'm a former SEAL too, and I'm also teaching meditation." So I was like, "Of course, I got to connect with this guy." So Jeff, for you, how did you first discover mindfulness and mental health as a passion?
Well, I think those two are probably two different things for me. I think when I look back, I've always been somewhat mindful. I just never really identified it as mindfulness per se. I just kind of thought it was just awareness and just being aware. But I'd say I identified mindfulness probably this year. I went through the course in March of this year, and I had been meditating for a while, off and on, but more rigidly for about the past year. And I had done more yogic, tantric meditations for for between 30 and 45 minutes a day. And so for whatever reason, mindfulness through Sean Fargo's course just spoke to me because I'd become an integrative trauma coach practitioner through the Aura Institute. And one of the, so they offered breathwork, meditation, and somatics is kind of like a trifecta in this program that I went through. They don't offer it anymore, but when I went through, that's what it was. And so, meditation and breathwork always spoke to me. So I really just wanted to take my meditation further. And Sean, couples it with mindfulness. A lot of people think they're both the same thing, but they're not. So I liked his course. I liked how inclusive it was. It was just very, very comprehensive in its teachings and its resources. It's a great community. I've met you on there, small world. Who would have known that? So and then mental health. Mental health probably actually last year is when I started pursuing my second master's in clinical mental health counseling, because so for kind of a long story, but ultimately what I realized is that mental health is just mental strength, and it took a long time to finally come to that. because in the teams, the last thing anybody is ever going to do is go talk to a therapist or a counselor
Right.
or anything like that,
Or at
right?
least
For
admit
for
to it.
obvious, right? Yeah, exactly. And the same thing in first responder community, in police and firefighters, EMT. It's all the same. It's the same stigma, right? And I would also, just kind of generalize that towards men, and for the most part, right? It's a sign of it's a feeling of weakness, but um, what I've realized is that by avoiding that which you fear, you're not strong, right? You're actually exacerbating your own fear, which is weakness itself, right? So to face that fear, that's strength. And so what I figured was that I wanted to see change, right? I wanted to see change in our community. I want to see change in the first responder community. And so, I mean, to be cheesy and sort of quote Gandhi, to see that kind of change, I figured you got to be the change that you want to see. So
Yes, and so as far as the work with the first responders, I'm guessing you kind of went into that because we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. Is that what brought you to that? And then how is your experience within the SEAL teams? How has it shaped the way that you approach the first responders, if you will?
what brought me to it was really just a kind of a serendipitous, opportunities as they always are. I connected through with a mentor through the Soft Network, which is like it's a nonprofit uh, network for people who are looking for clinicians for mental health treatment, or people like myself, from the community in mental health and wanting, kind of mentorship and some tutelage along the way. So I reached out to the founder there, and he connected me with somebody in the area, and we just hit it off. And she's awesome, and we just spoke every month for about 9 months, and one thing led to another, and that turns out to be where I'm interning. And so she's she's familiar with R type because she was at NICO for a while.
And for the audience, if you would just unpack what NICO is.
NICO is an acronym. It stands for National Intrepid Center of Excellence. It's a 4 week. Basically, it's a checkup from the neck up. You see a new doctor every hour, every day, 5 days a week for 4 weeks, and it's every kind of doctor you can imagine. Um, I say checkup from the neck up, but there is somatic therapy, there's yoga, there's stuff like that as well. So I still keep in touch with a couple of people there. Awesome people. So
Yeah, man. I did not go through NICO, but I went through the Portsmouth Naval Hospital's, what was it? Traumatic brain injury and concussion clinic or something. It was similar. It's 2 weeks long, intensive as well. They test your balance. They test, you get in with a you get in with psychologists, psychiatrists. You get in with everything. They do a little bit of art therapy. I mean, it's probably NICO JV, if you will, but it was super powerful, and I think that also had a play in my journey of being a part of mental health. And the reason I asked you to come on the show, Jeff, I'm certainly it was bound to happen at one point or another, both with similar backgrounds as far as being in the special operations community and now teaching meditation and mindfulness. And I'm glad that you said that they are not the same. I agree. There's definitely aspects that are overlapping, but all in all, like I'm signed up for your Substack, and I got an article about judgment being the obstacle or the barrier. I forget the exact title, but the obstacle between you and joy. And in your article, you mentioned judgment as a self protection mechanism. Can you talk about why you think judgment is so deeply rooted in us, and then how it's so rooted in fear?
yeah. Oh boy, I hope we got time because this might be deep. So judgment in the article is something that I said is a barrier to our joy. It blocks us from joy because love and fear can't coexist, right? Love, the two emotions, they can't live in the same moment. So when somebody wants to judge somebody, my position is that they're judging. Let's just say, I don't know, you judge. Let's just say John judges. I picked a random name. I wasn't directing it towards you. Let's just say Mike. I'm like, so So, so let's say Mike judges Sally for the way she's treating her kids in the grocery store, right? Um, Mike's not necessarily trying to connect with her, but that sort of fear of what Sally's doing to her kids, or what Sally might think of Mike if he were to speak up, that's preventing him from connection. So fear is the element that holds, almost every positive emotion back. It's the basis of every negative emotion. If you think of like anger, irritation, or irritability, they're every sort of negative emotion out there is a derivative off of fear. When somebody cuts you off, on the highway, we get pissed, right? It's a derivative of fear, because I'm fearing that I was disrespected. So love and fear, all emotions, in my opinion, they all kind of, narrow down to love or fear. And so everything else is a derivative off those.
Interesting, man. Yeah. I've definitely felt that with anger it comes from embarrassment, which is a form of fear. It comes from humiliation, which is the same, I guess. But I fully agree that so much comes from fear. I love that the flip side, that that basically the other side of that coin is love, and that the two can't exist at the same time in the in the same mind. So you say that judgment kind of shrinks our world, lowers our vibration. Uh, One, what do you mean by that? And then how does this affect someone's mental and emotional health?
So it affects our world because, let's see, if I'm judging somebody, I can't connect, right? If I'm judging somebody, I'm still in that place of fear. And therefore there is no love, right? Nothing good is ever going to come from a place of fear, unless that fear is trying to protect you, right? That's when fear is worthwhile, right? But if I'm in an argument with my wife, and she's putting in her 2 cents and I'm putting in mine, there's no there's no opportunity for connection. We're both digging our heels in because our egos, are fearful of being hurt, right? Of being diminished, or whatever it is. So there's no opportunity for connection. So that's how judgment holds oneself back.
And then specifically the vibration piece. What do you mean by that?
So this might get a little woo woo for some of the listeners
Bring
out
it, man.
there,
Bring it.
but everything vibrates, right? Everything, it's been scientifically proven, everything has a vibration, right? Humans, rocks, trees, wood, emotions, thoughts, they all have vibrations, right? And some vibrate at a higher frequency, some vibrate at a lower frequency. Lower frequency vibrations are those that are essentially negative. They're, hate speech, negative self-talk, any kind of negative emotion. Positive ones are just the opposite of that. So I think it's anything less than 200 is considered in the negative realm, and then upwards of 800 and upwards of 1,000, you're basically closer to the Dalai Lama. So there's a great book out there. It's by David Hawkins. He's actually calibrated cities, let alone people, with vibration. So you can go to cities and calibrate which ones are vibrate negatively,
Oh,
positively.
how interesting.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So,
Oh, now I'm curious
oh,
what our area vibrates at.
the book is called Letting Go. My dad lives in Vegas, right? I love my dad. Vegas is a tough city to go to, right? For me, there's just so much. I mean, think of all the stuff that's in the air there, right? Aside from just the smoke, But I mean, every sort of negative, or every kind of addiction out there, pretty much resides right in Vegas proper, right? And so to me, when I go out there, I get like this whole, like, it's like I'm opening the door to my dryer, right? And this whole like influx of just negativity just like washes over me, and I feel it. And it's just, it influences how I feel, influences what I think. And so it's hard being out there.
Oh, I fully agree. And Vegas, and I can think of a handful of other ones that just popped in my mind right off the bat, based on, like you said, the kind of the addictions, or just the general kind of aura, if you will, and probably getting a little woo woo there. But here, like in Colorado Springs, there's a lot of There's a lot of things to do outdoors. There's a lot of drive to get outdoors and be active. And I think that's kind of a positive vibration, if you will. Whereas, there may be other cities where it's all about work, 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 the high rises. And I'm not judging people. Certainly we're not judging people who live there because, again, judgment gets in the way of our joy. So we don't want to judge on a show where we're talking about judgment. But I can definitely see that. That's really interesting. I'll have to pick that book up. So meditation, mindfulness, and overcoming judgment. You talk about meditation, kind of amplifying the space between stimulus and response. And, I've got Viktor Frankl's book up there, Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about that space between a stimulus and a response. And it's that time to take a breath, right? Can you give an example of how this would work to keep one from making a judgment and therefore having a barrier between us and our sense of joy?
So meditation, I cannot think of a better vehicle for one's mental health than meditation, right? I know you're biased as well, but God, it's just such an effective, modality. I don't even know where to begin with this, but meditation allows you to just essentially, I like the metaphor of using traffic. For all the listeners out there, what I'm referring to is if I'm sitting on the side of the road, right, that resembles me sitting in meditation. And all the cars that are driving by on the highway, those represent my thoughts. And all those cars are different colors, different makes. Some are going different speeds. They're asshole drivers. They're slow drivers. There's all kinds of drivers out there, right? Just like there are all kinds of thoughts, and some are good, some are negative, some are not helpful. But there's just they're just driving on that highway. They're just going right on by. And so the benefit of meditation in the context of judgment is I'm not judging how fast those cars go by. I'm not trying to ascertain the license plate or the make and model of the vehicle. All I'm doing is simply noticing them. I'm just watching it go by and watching it go and just letting it go. And then just coming back to the breath or whatever it is you're focusing on. And then, at some point, another car will pass by and noticing that. And so what that does in the long term is it just allows you to practice the skill of non-judgmental awareness, which is essentially what mindfulness is, right? Non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. And so, and the discussion we're talking about here with judgment being an obstacle to joy, what that allows you is to essentially get space, right? Get distance from the stimulus, right? And so instead of just responding with a knee-jerk reaction, somebody calls me a name and I'm like blah blah blah, I get immediately defensive, right? I wouldn't say just that for verbatim, but blah blah blah, whatever that is. So I would essentially, ideally, I've been known to not do this because I'm human, but I can't imagine what I would be like if I didn't meditate, quite honestly. But what that does is it allows you to get distance from the problem, right? It allows you to see the problem for what it is, which is really just an emotion, which is really just, a word or a phrase or something that came from somebody else. And now it's over. Now it's gone, right? That's kind of the beauty of impermanence. Whatever was said, now it's gone. And so that moment doesn't really matter right now. So when I apply judgment, if I were to apply judgment in this case to somebody calling me a name, I'm not judging them on who they are. I'm judging them on who they were, right? On what was said. And so that clinging to the past, right? That clinging to the past is what creates a lot of suffering from a Buddhist perspective. And I don't need to do that to myself. Like, it's over, right? Let's talk about what's going on right now in this moment. And that's how you can sort of remove judgment and prevent it from being an obstacle to joy, right? Joy is in the moment.
Yeah. Amen. And, I guess taking a step inward with regards to that judgment, right? We have these feelings, these emotions, these thoughts. They're just like the cars that are passing on the highway. But when we have an emotion like anger, for example, anger, sadness, there's that emotion, first of all, and then there's a judgment about that emotion, right? We think about our thoughts, we have feelings about our feelings, this metacognition, and it's just a downward spiral. So sure, we may have judgment about a scenario, we may have judgment about a person, we may have judgment about something external to us, but in a lot of instances, there's judgment inward, and that can certainly keep us from joy. You know, sadness is a natural human emotion. Anger is, a secondary emotion, like we talked about, based on so many other things. Fear, well, being one of them. But when we have these emotions and then we start judging ourselves for having them, it's a downward spiral. Those you talked about negative self-talk before. Hey, I'm sad. Oh shit, I shouldn't be sad because I have a roof over my head, I have a car, I have food on my table. Who am I to be sad? And then you start judging yourself. We're still human beings, and we're going to judge the situation, or rather experience the situation for what it is. And then if we can keep from judging it, that I think you're spot on with your article and everything that you've said thus far. To keep from judging it keeps us from that barrier, that obstacle from joy. So now, in speaking about in meditation a little bit more, again, we've gone through various courses, and one of the same courses for someone who's new to meditation. And you mentioned a great start, but what's some simple steps they can take to reducing that judgment in their daily life?
Everybody's going to judge at some point, right? We don't have control over the first thought, right? We just don't have control over that. We do have control over thoughts 2, 3, 4, and so on. So if a judgment enters, you know, don't get down on yourself. That's the first thing. Is the first step is really just to notice it. Just notice it. Notice that I'm judging right now, and then let it go. Right? Call yourself on it. Label it. And feeling. There's nothing wrong with negative emotions, right? People are like, oh, I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be angry. Well, you're human. It's going to happen, right? So the key is to not get down on yourself and judge yourself, or try to pathologize the source of that anger or whatever that is, and just move on. And which is, I think people can probably confuse with suppressing it, right? So you want to feel it, not ignore it. So meditation is a, like I said before, it's such a great practicing, a great training ground. For anybody who's never meditated out there, how you can start is really just sitting down, closing your eyes, and focusing on the breath. And judgments will, without a doubt, come in. This sucks. I'm not good at this. I can't stop thinking. Like you're never going to turn off your mind, right? I just got to say, I want to say right now, for anybody who thinks that you're supposed to, not think during meditation, that's not true. It's the only time you don't think is when you're dead, right? So how can you start? It's noticing it, noticing your judgments. And to me, the first step to solving anything is becoming aware of it, right? So awareness is half the battle in anything that you approach. So sitting down to meditate and noticing what thoughts come in, that's, to me, that's the first step. And then when you're aware of what judging does, which in this case, is my contention that it blocks joy, stop judging, right? Just notice it. it's that simple, but it's also that difficult too, right? It's not easy. It's easier said than done, but it's a skill, and it takes practice.
The label piece, man, name it to tame it, right? You name that you're judging, and then don't beat yourself up for judging. Again, that's it. That's just another judgment of the judgment. So what's the opposite of judgment, if you will? And you talk about compassion being that opposite. You contrast judgment with compassion in that article. Again, that article is available on Jeff's Substack. But how can someone shift from that judgment to compassion? And that's in their thoughts, it's in their relationships, it's in the way that they show up. How do you think how do you recommend they shift from that?
To answer your question, the opposite of judgment in my mind is acceptance, right? Because if I'm accepting, I'm in a mode of reception. I'm receiving, right? Judging, I'm kind of, pushing energies going out. Acceptance, I'm just neutral, right? How one might develop that is through meditations through compassionate meditation, and that's compassion is absolutely a developable skill. Um, I never believed myself to be very compassionate at all. you know, I mean, for obvious reasons, we kind of had to be in the teams, and so um, that part of me was just never accessed until recently. And then I realized just how kind of weak of a man I was blocking out compassion, right? And so you can do that with some compassionate meditations, which for example might be starting out with giving yourself some love and gratitude, wishing yourself well, extending that to family members, extending that to friends, extending that to somebody you dislike, offering compassion towards them, offering compassion towards an enemy, right? That's where the emotions start pouring in. But that's also where compassion starts to be developed, right? Because I already have compassion towards my wife, so bringing her into my meditation really isn't going to help too much unless we're fighting, right? Um, so identifying those sources that are basically anything other than compassionate and extending compassion towards them, that's how you can develop compassion. But I will caveat this with one last point, which is that when you do this, there are two requirements. One, you want to be comfortable, right? However you sit, you want to be comfortable in your meditation, because if you're uncomfortable, then you really can't focus on what you're doing. And two, you want to feel compassion yourself. So if you're angry or irritable or impatient, you're not going to really feel compassion. So in order to offer compassion to others, you have to feel compassion yourself. So those are the two requirements.
Yeah, man, great points. And one of the things that when I talk about compassion, or specifically about developing compassion, one of the examples that I always use, and it stems from the loving kindness meditations, but the example is when Jennifer Lawrence, back in the day, she went up on stage to receive her Oscar, and she tripped and fell. And I certainly don't mean that example um, exclusively or specifically, but I want people to put themselves in her shoes, right? They're going up on stage to receive an award for reaching the pinnacle of their success, or the pinnacle of their career. And they're going before the entire world to receive this award. And as they go up on stage, they trip and fall. And when I put that example out there, I always ask, what are some words that are rolling through your mind right now directed toward yourself? And I hear things like idiot, fool, I knew this was going to happen. I will never recover from this. These kinds of things. I'm such a klutz, these kinds of things, right? And then I say, okay, now remember that. Now imagine that is a friend of yours going up on stage. Same thing. Okay, what do you imagine? And for the most part, I hear, it's okay, buddy, you got this. Don't worry, you'll recover from this. Everybody falls. It's okay. Sometimes I get people who laugh at their friends. I'm like, I don't want to be your friend, but and then I say, okay, let's take it one step further. I want you to imagine that's somebody that you have neutral feelings for. You don't know them from Adam or Eve. You just see it happen. Or even one step further, imagine that's an enemy of yours. And I want you to try to have compassion for that person, whether they're neutral or an enemy. And man, people are like, this is really difficult. Like, people want the person, if it's their enemy, they're like, I want that person to fall flat on their face. Like, okay, let's think about it. They're a human being. Think about the kind of remove whatever it is that makes them your quote unquote enemy, and think of them as a human being. That's when I think the true compassion comes in, is when you realize that there is this thing, common humanity. We all do the same thing. We're all trying to make it from, birth to death without screwing up too much. And when you can think about the fact that we're all connected in some form or fashion, coming back to the vibrations, right? We have these vibrations, but we also have connections. And when you can think about that, I think that's a huge piece to develop that compassion. When you said that you were a weak man, uh, I would argue you weren't a weak man. You were just in a space where this wasn't a priority. It wasn't known to you. Once it's become known to you, now you've taken it, you grasp it. So I would give yourself some compassion, right, in that regard. So in the article, you mentioned a first responder at a retreat, kind of struggling with that self compassion. What advice would you give to someone who is specifically wrestling with judgment about themselves?
There are only so many types of, I hate to label them problems, but sorts of dilemmas that we can face and solve on our own. Solve, in air quotes. Some things, some things we can't we can't solve on our own. Some things we just need other people, other resources. So in this case, somebody who is just down on themselves all the time. Again, first step is to go to awareness, right, and to just realize it. I mean, there are a couple different activities one might try. They could try a thought journal, kind of journaling down their thoughts, and just writing them down daily, and then reviewing them at the end of the day, end of the week. I mean, if you wanted to, you could tally them up and see which side of the spectrum you're on, and go from there. But awareness is the first step, and then what you could do is really just challenge it. Once you're aware of a negative thought coming up, for example, identify what that thought is, and then not necessarily find the opposite, but challenge it. Challenge yourself to find evidence of that negative thought. Prove it. Prove why I'm so weak, or why I'm so uh, I don't know, angry, or judgmental, or find some contrarian evidence for the opposite, and then open yourself up to the possibility that maybe that judgment was inaccurate. Maybe that judgment wasn't right, because this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, but we are not our thoughts, right? We are not what we think. So just because there's a negative judgment or a negative thought, that doesn't mean you are a bad person, or you are negative, or you are hopeless, or any of that. They're just thoughts, right? They're just cars on the highway.
So let's that cars on the highway, what you just talked about, you are not your thoughts. I know one thing that I struggled with in the SEAL teams. Um, we were surrounded by some very high performing individuals. Um, you know, I, I was a good shooter, but I wasn't very good in the house. And what I mean by the house is the kill house, if you will, for our listeners. Going in and doing some close quarters combat, close quarters battle, whatever it's called these days. How did you, as a SEAL, in your experience, one, did judgment ever get in the way of your performance or your decision making? And then how did you overcome that?
I didn't let it. I was very, very aware of it. So I would say the most stressful time of my life was going through Green Team. Was going through Shaw's at Green Team. Green Team is selection for development group for people out there. And if you want to know more about it, then Wikipedia will tell you more than I will. But for whatever reason, the instructors just gave me a lot of shit. Right? They just gave me a lot of shit, and they pick on people. They pick on people to see how they'll respond. Sometimes they'll give you a safety violation when and damn good, and all good well that you didn't do anything that was unsafe. And so I just to mess with you, just to screw with you. And so they were constantly on my ass for whatever reason. And if I let my negative self-talk, interfere, I would have never made it through. I was so adamant, and I visualized myself making it through. I visualized everything. I damn near eliminated all negative self-talk, and just to prove them wrong, when they said, let's just say, boss, you got to be more aggressive, quit being a sissy. Not necessarily those words, but I would prove them wrong, and I'd be the number one man through the door next time, right? I would stack up as number one man every single time as much as I could, just to show them that, okay, you got the wrong guy here, all right. But if I let that get to me, I would have never ever made it through. So I can't honestly, I cannot think of a time when I ever succumbed to negative self talk, because I've always been aware of it ever since I was a kid.
I think that's right there. Right there is the answer. And you've said that, within the interview thus far is awareness. That I think that's where a lot of people, they're not even aware of their judgment, their negative self talk, and then they're not aware of how that is affecting them. So if you are aware, one, that you're having that negative self talk, and then two, as you mentioned before, a lot of the time that self talk isn't true, right? It's a belief. I think that's a way to overcome it and keep it from getting in the way of what it is you truly want to do. Um, so so let's come to your article a little bit more. It talks about, what do we have? Judgment as a silent obstacle. Yeah,
Just to clarify that for listeners, if you don't mind, could I add one last thing?
yeah, yeah. Of course.
So with that, obviously, obviously I'm human, and obviously I would have like negative self talk, like, oh, I'm so stupid, what, I can't believe I did that. Obviously, I will do that once in a while, but what I'm referring to is the degree of negative self talk that would have reshaped my beliefs about who I am. That sort of level that I've never experienced, because to your point, awareness is half the battle. So I just wanted to clarify that obviously I'm human and negative stuff comes in, but um, just push it right out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the clarification there, man, and definitely the compassion piece. Right, we're human. So in your article, you talk about, judgment as a silent obstacle, which I think we've covered in not so many words, but the article itself, what inspired you to write that, for our listeners, and how can they find you if they wanted to follow up on this article and or anything else that you're working on?
Oh, thank you. Um, so they can go to my Substack, which is healingwarriorswithin.com. What inspired me for the article was my own experience. Really, I just found myself um, judging more than normal, and I just noticed it, and I noticed the effect that it had on me in my relationships, and so I figured, if I'm getting something out of this, and other people probably will too. Most of my articles, they're all written from my own personal experience, of things that I've either noticed about me or about other people, or the relationship they're in. So, or from clients, client engagements I have uh, with folks. So judgment was, like I said, I'm human. I judge, and I notice when I'm doing it more than I want to, more than I prefer, and so that's what was coming up for me. And I just noticed things that were going on in my body at the time, and the dynamic between myself and the others. So I put that to words and wrote it.
I love it, man, and it's something we haven't talked about, but as you were just talking about that, it came into my mind is um, judgment can lead to gossip, right? Now we've moved from judgment of ourselves, judgment, of our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own emotions, and just moving that to judgment of others. And you talked about the grocery store example earlier, but I would say that a lot of the time in a workspace, in school, I mean, really, again, any situation where there's humans involved, there's going to be some level of judgment, and more often than not, that judgment leads to gossip, and that gossip leads to toxic cultures, toxic environments. So that toxic culture, toxic environment can also get in between you and joy. I think it can also get in between you and success. If you're thinking about, in the professional setting, judging others, seeing them get a promotion, you're like, well, they're not as good as they're not as good as I am. Why did they get a promotion? That kind of thing. And I think coming back to the whole root of this, fear, love, and awareness. I think if you boil this whole conversation down to three words, it would be that. That's how you, the love and awareness is how you can overcome that judgment and reach that joy. And, and that doesn't mean happiness. That doesn't mean it's this permanent state. We talked about a state of impermanence before. It's a moment to moment joy. So for you, man, what's next for you with the first responders, mental health advocacy, meditation, whatever else you got going on, man?
Thank you for that. Just to add on to what you just said, I would just add on for the listeners that the constant pursuit of joy is really the absence of it, right? So if we're constantly searching for joy, one, it suggests we don't have it, and two, we'll never find it because we're constantly looking for it. So this goes back to just noticing, right? Just noticing what comes up, and if there's no joy, that's okay. Acceptance, right? It goes back to acceptance. So just want to clarify that. What's next for me? So I'm doing my practicum, which is like a part of the field experience for clinicians in my program. Practicum is basically going into the field site 2 days a week before you start internship. And internship is 6 months. Practicum is 3 months. So it's really just an opportunity to get your feet wet with clients, and kind of apply your counseling skills. So that's what I'm doing. Working solely with police and their spouses. So it's an awesome community. I love it. I love the team that I work with. There's nothing better than enjoying, the environment that you work in. So I haven't had that in a long time. Excuse me, and I finally have it now. So it's great. It's great to be there.
Awesome, man. Good to hear. Again, so we talked about your Substack. If somebody else wanted to reach out to you for services, if there's a law enforcement organization that wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I think on my Substack they can reach out. Let's see. It's a great question. So it would either be through Healing Warriors Within, or find me on LinkedIn, and you can email me.
There you go. Right on, man. Well, as I said, or as we did at the beginning of the show, grounding practice. We always like to wrap it up with the grounding practice at the end. And as I mentioned before I hit record, if the guest is a practitioner and more specifically a teacher of mindfulness or meditation, we love to turn it over to you. So if you're open to it still, brother, I'd love to throw it over to you, man.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, John. So let's do the 4-7-8 technique.
Yeah.
For anybody out there who's never done with it, unfamiliar with it, 4-7-8 is a breathing technique designed to lower your activation. So 4-7-8 refers to inhaling for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 7 seconds, and then exhaling for 8 seconds. The reason we double the exhale compared to the inhale is because that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest, version of the regular nervous system, as opposed to fight or flight, which is on the inhale. So inhale activates you, exhale deactivates you. Let's just do 2 rounds. All right. So we'll inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And push all the air out, belly to spine. And inhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Belly to spine. And then inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right.
Right on,
I shared
man.
that with a client of mine who
how'd it go?
it was really, he loved it. He loved it. It was a way for him to sort of deactivate in conversations when he got really nervous and excited. So it's a great technique.
Yeah, man. That box breathing, there's a lot, but breath work. If you've never done breath work, check it out. Various forms, hundreds of different ways to do it. You can use it to, like Jeff said, activate you. Like if you want to get more in the moment, or rather maybe not in the moment, so that's probably the wrong term, but if you want to have more energy in that moment, that's a great way to do it. But if you also want to calm down, then there's other ways to do it, like Jeff just did, kind of deactivated us. So, all right, well, Jeff, man, this has been great for the audience. Letting go of that judgment. It's certainly not easy, but it is the first step, or one of the first steps toward living that life of more compassionate or more compassion, more joy, and certainly not searching for joy, but finding it. You can find it even when you're not
Correct.
searching it. So be sure to check out Jeff's article. It's Judgment is the Obstacle Between You and Joy, on his Substack. For you all, thanks for tuning in today. Jeff, thanks so much for being your brother. If you would just hang tight after I hit pause on the recording, I'd appreciate that. And for those listening, again, thanks for tuning in. Please share this episode and just our podcast in general with anyone and everyone who you think will benefit. And until next time, take care.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.